So, let's take a trip back to the past without needing Doc Brown's DeLorean to recapture the 80s with Thomas Jeffrey Hanks. But before we take this trip, don't forget to subscribe, click that like button, and comment on the video. Okay, so let's get to it. Come January 1st, 1980, Tom Hanks would already be married to his college sweetheart, Samantha Luz, for a little over 2 years. His son Colin was born in 1977, and Tom was preparing to make his mark in Hollywood come August 29th, 1980, with a not-so-memorable small role in a not-so-original thriller slasher film. This would be Tom's acting debut with a 2 brief scene appearance in He Knows You're Alone, about a young bride-to-be that is stalked by a serial killer in Staten Island, while the brides are alone on the night before their weddings. Because all brides who are getting married the next day would much rather be alone than spend their last single night with their friends and family. Plot lines in the 80s, right?
Whatever!
2 short months after that theatrical release, the world would then see Tom in his first TV appearance with a guest role on The Love Boat for the first episode of the 4th season. America would come to see a lot more of him on the small screen the next 2 years with his starring role as Kip, Buffy Wilson, alongside Peter Scolari, in a series called BOSOM Buddies from the ABC network, about 2 advertising designers who had the problem of finding an affordable place to live until a friend suggested that they should stay at her building, with the catch of the affordable apartment being a building for women residents only. So in desperation, the men assumed the identities of the women Hildegard and Buffy in order to rent the available apartment. The show does have some questionable material as jokes that wouldn't pass as acceptable today. But remember, the 80s was a much different time. This show would bring Tom his first steady paycheck and would also be the first time Tom would meet and work with his future wife, Rita Wilson. BOSOM Buddies would run for 2 years from 1980 to 1982. Right before BOSOM Buddies would be canceled, Tom and Samantha would have their second child, Elizabeth Ann Hanks, on May 17, 1982. Colin would go on to follow in his parents' Hollywood footprints, with Tinseltown built in his DNA. Next, Tom would make 2 TV guest roles on Taxi and on Happy Days on April 29th and November 11th, 1982, respectively. In his role on Happy Days, on the episode titled A Little Case of Revenge, Dr. Dwayne Twitchell, played by Hanks, challenges the Fonz to a fight as a black belt karate expert who has held a grudge against the Fonz since the 3rd grade, and now, after all these years, wants to take revenge. His next gig would be his first starring movie role in yet another non-comedic film, Mazes and Monsters, released on December 28, 1982. So Tom plays Robbie Wheeler, who decides to move a board game that he and his friends are playing into the local legendary cavern to finish the game they started together. As the game progresses, Robbie starts having real visions from the game, and the line between reality and fantasy fuse into a thrilling but somewhat cheesy adventure. Tom would take a mini hiatus from movies for 2 years, only taking a single character role on Family Ties, which would be a 3-episode gig. The first 2 episodes aired in 1983 as part of the first season, and his final TV appearance of the 80s was in the episode Say Uncle, which aired on January 26, 1984, for the second season. Tom would play Uncle Ned, the brother of Elise. The Say Uncle episode would be a serious show about alcoholism with a few memorable jokes thrown in. TV series were known to turn out a few episodes per season on current society concerns with positive meaning, or at the very least, some awareness. Again, the 80s was a very different time. Ned has developed a drinking problem, while Alex tries to convince his reluctant family to help him before it's too late. This would mark the last acting TV appearance for Tom in the 80s, thanks to the success that was soon to come with his next movie role. This movie would be released on March 9th, 1984, with great box office earnings of over $69 million, that's equivalent to over $172 million for inflation today. Splash is still recognized as arguably one of Hank's most recognizable movies associated with the actor. Co-starring the beautiful girl next door, Daryl Hannah, Eugene Levy, and John Candy. After a near-death experience in the waters of Cape Cod, a successful businessman, Alan Burr, finds himself in need of saving just like he was nearly 20 years ago. After being rescued, Alan returns home only to realize that his mysterious blonde savior, the innocent Madison, has followed him back to New York. We recommend watching this movie if you haven't already. It currently has a 90% Rotten Tomatoes rating. The next project to follow would be Bachelor Party, released that same year. However, easily and understandably hit or miss on your bucket list of movies to watch. It is still a very funny movie that showcases a lot more of what would come to be surprisingly expected, the unpredictability of Mr. Tom Hanks. Just watching this film, I can almost feel how much fun Tom had. Almost dare to say he was in full-on bachelor party mode. Looking back on his early marriage and structured family, this film almost gives off a portrait of what Tom may have missed out on in his early 20s. Next on Tom's filmography would be a comedy thriller called The Man with One Red Shoe, released on July 19, 1985. This would be Hank's first movie with the stunning Carrie Fisher. Jim Belushi would also have a prominent role. Tom plays Richard, who is randomly picked out at the airport as the main suspect in an internal CIA plot. So the CIA sets up surveillance on Richard and sends him a femme fatale, and the rest plays out something like this.
Now, double agents are fascinated by him.
Why the one red shoe?
Beautiful women are attracted to him.
I knew it was you.
Could you please just step aside?
You're cooking now.
May I help you?
And complete strangers are knocked out by his charm.
Something wrong?
No, Mom.
Tom would then rekindle a former professional relationship with Rita Wilson in Volunteers, also starring John Candy. Hank's character Lawrence is a rich kid with a bad accent and a large debt. After his father refuses to help him settle this debt, Lawrence escapes his collectors by jumping on a Peace Corps flight to Southeast Asia. This film would close out the 1985 year for Tom. It would also be the year that sparks began to ignite and set the wheels in motion for a future life-changing personal decision for Tom, to be discussed shortly. Back to his professional life, his next film is possibly one of the most underrated movies of the 80s, in my opinion. The Money Pit with Shelley Long would be released to the public on March 26, 1986. Tom and Shelley play a couple who are looking for a new house with not much they can afford. This soon changes when they meet a lonely old woman who sells them a beautiful mansion at a ridiculously low price. Only there's a catch. As soon as they move into this house, it starts to fall apart, from the stairway collapsing to the bathtub falling through the floor and much more. This movie would fully showcase the comedic style of Tom Hanks while being complemented by Shelley Long's genius but dry comedy style. They really had such great chemistry together, and I'm really disappointed they never made any more films together in the 80s.
Sorry.
The next film Tom would choose would be a comedy drama, his first role taken with a more serious topic. He would co-star in what would be the final film of the late great Jackie Gleason. Nothing in Common would be released on July 30th, 1986, with critically mixed reviews. David Bassner, a highly successful advertising executive, played by Hanks, decides to put his goals on hold after getting news from his father that he and his mother have divorced. Tom had experienced this in his real life as a child at 5 years old when his own parents got divorced. This movie selection may have been a way for Tom to confront some of the issues that brought uncertainty throughout his life and his marriage. By the time Tom was 10 years old, he had already had 10 different resident addresses. The character's qualities of brashness, overconfidence, and a womanizing meal are all things that are so foreign to Hanks' actual personality, which again showcased his excellent acting skills. Hanks would next film Every Time You Say Goodbye, released November 14, 1986. This is about a Protestant World War II pilot and a Jewish woman who both fall in love in Jerusalem, even though their diverse backgrounds threaten to pull them apart. The title would be a precursor for what would come for Tom in his personal life the following year. After 9 years of marriage, Tom and Samantha Lewis would finally call it quits. Their careers would take very different paths from this point forward. Tom would later take full blame of the failed marriage due to him harboring issues that he never faced up to from his parents' divorce that caused him to be distant and uncommunicative through his first marriage. Tom would later face and fix these issues with the help of his new spouse along with years of therapy. On June 26, 1987, Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd would team up to star in Dragnet, which would be a theatrical release to the 1967 TV series Dragnet 1967, with the same characters as partners. Both Dan and Tom add their own styles to their parts that are far from forgettable. If you love buddy cop films, go check this one out. You won't be disappointed. All I can say is, thank goodness the world got to experience this.
We're just in time. We have stumbled into a major crime. They got the girl all frightened. Now that's not nice. I think she is the subject of a sexual life. Buddy, we're putting this party on ice. But you know, we really gotta read them their rights. Read them their rights. Read them their rights. Well, I'm here tonight to rap about your rights. Cause right now you're in trouble. Don't have to say nothing at all. Y'all got to call and you better make them on the table.
They just don't make promotions like that anymore. 88 would be an amazing year for Tom, both professionally and personally. Call it a new birth of his loving life attitude. First, Tom and Rita would marry on April 30th, 1988, from a romance that was sparked after recreating chemistry in their professional relationship while filming Volunteers. Tom would later say about Rita after getting married, "Rita and I just looked at each other and kaboing, that was that. I asked Rita if it was the real thing for her and it just couldn't be denied," quoted Hanks. After sitting on this bliss for about a month, the world was then treated with the movie that would forever change Tom's status, pay, and life as he would know it. Tom's first big paycheck came in 1984 for the movie Splash, earning $70,000. For his first movie in 1988, Tom would earn $1.75 million for Big, released by 20th Century Fox on June 3, 1988, would grant Hanks full recognition by his peers in Hollywood and fans of cinema alike. The movie is about a young boy named Josh Baskin, who wishes to be older than he really is, all to impress a girl. The teenage boy wakes the next morning to find himself mysteriously in the body of an adult, but he still has the same personality and mindset of a 13-year-old. With the help of his best friend Billy, Josh learns how to act like a grown-up. With a fun job, a place to live, and a girlfriend, he takes us on this journey of comedic genius, showing why he was the perfect adult child for this role. The movie would go on to gross over $151 million worldwide, which is equivalent to over $329 million adjusted for inflation, all on an $18 million budget. Tom would get an Oscar nominee for Best Actor in a Leading Role and would win a Golden Globe for Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture, a very well-deserved and earned award. On October 7, 1988, Tom would co-star in Punchline with another legend, Sally Fields. John Goodman and Damon Wayans are also in this film about a medical school dropout and a housewife and mom who try to make it as stand-up comedians. They become close friends and help each other out at an NYC comedy club as they struggle to find their way, perhaps reflecting on Tom's early career struggles with his wife, family, and career. Tom would go on to earn $5 million for this film, which would set the bar for Tom's future roles for the rest of the decade. My personal all-time favorite film from Tom Hanks would have to be the '89 film The Burbs, with Carrie Fisher and Corey Feldman. In this outrageous and clever, funny comedy about a typical American neighborhood, when some new neighbors come to live in the house right next door to Ray Peterson, played by Hanks. These neighbors are really strange, according to them. Nobody has ever seen them. The house is a real mess, and during the night you can hear weird noises coming from their basement. The only thing they know is their name, Klopex.
What is that, Slavic? No.
Throughout it all, we get some peeks of mannerisms that would also reflect in one of Tom's late 90s characters, Woody from the Pixar franchise Toy Story. The last movie of the decade for Hanks would be a brilliant, albeit another cop and buddy, dog film released in '89. Okay, well maybe not all. Tina Turner's was a fake. In the real Turner and Hooch, Tom plays an OCD cop named Turner who is tasked with solving the murder of Hooch's owner before he leaves town to another precinct with more action. This movie would show some of Mr. Hanks' emotional acting skills that would help him greatly in landing leading drama roles in the decades to follow. Although the movie would not bring as much box office success as Big, he would continue to ride it high in achievements. And so, as you know, this is That's So 80's, and that's all we have for you about Tom Hanks' grind and filmography throughout the 80s. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please take some time and tell us how we did in the comment section, and be sure to smash that thumbs up button.